Well, good morning, church. My name is Nick Patselis, and I have the great joy of being the minister here at Salisbury Uniting. Special welcome to those who I haven't met. It's so great to be able to engage with you on either YouTube or on the church online platform. We're in week 3 of a teaching series called Whisper, where we're wanting to be people who hear the voice of God and do what He asks, to be people who have a living, breathing relationship with God. The most important thought for this time is if God can speak to us, then His voice must be the most important voice to listen to. The most important voice to shape our lives around, to orientate our beings. And this week, as the worship leaders, as Mandy and Dennis have said, we're going to be looking at different blockages. So kids, how are you guys going with the challenge? Have you picked up many words? Apparently you can make 334 words with the letters from this here. So you would have maybe picked up some of the easy ones like, lock. Did some of you guys get that one? Surely. How many of you got bagel? Bagel? Any bagel lovers there? How about if we rearrange some of this? Oh, did any of you guys have lakes? Apparently you can make scale as well, if you rearrange that a bit. But it'll be great to see how many words the kids get by the end of this service. And this morning, I strongly encourage you, make sure you have a notebook with you and you're taking notes, because I'm going to talk for a bit, but then we're going to come over to an interview with Craig Heinemann from New Life Church on the Gold Coast. New Life is a church which I was a part of, where I came to faith, and Craig Heinemann is the worship and creative arts pastor there. And so Craig has so much wisdom, and you're going to need a notebook because you're going to want to take a lot of notes. And this week, and as we think about different blockages from hearing the voice of God, I want to open by this quote by Saint Bernard. It says this: "The man or person who is wise, therefore, will see their life as more like a reservoir than a canal. The canal simultaneously pours out what it receives. The reservoir retains the water till it is filled, then discharges the overflow without loss to itself." Today there are many in the church who act like canals. The reservoirs are far too rare. You too must learn to await this fullness before pouring out your gifts. Do not try to be more generous than God. There's a beautiful image there in this quote, isn't there? To live lives not of constant intake and outtake, but a life of stillness and relationship with God, and from Him filling us up to overflow, then pouring out into others. There's a caution. Don't be so busy. Don't be so eager to just hear God and put it out straight away, but actually let God's words and God's being fill us up and then share that with others. That's why our vision as a church is to be healthy first and foremost, because as God does a work in our lives, the next part of our vision is to interact with the community, because it comes from the overflow. How are you during these COVID times going with this? Has this been an opportunity for you maybe to stop, to be that reservoir which has been filled up to overflow? Or are you still acting maybe a bit like a canal that's just pouring out, pouring out, pouring out? And one of the ways to maybe tell if you're being more of a canal than a reservoir is when you're giving and when you're serving and when you're looking after others. Is there a spirit of bitterness maybe creeping in? Are the thoughts creeping into your mind? No one's thanking me for this. These ungrateful people, don't they see what I'm doing? Maybe we're becoming more like a canal. A reservoir goes, I know who I am in God. I can give, because God has given so much to me. The tension with this is maybe to stop giving out, and that's not a canal or a reservoir. That is a swamp, where God pours into our life, pours into our life, pours into our life, and then the water becomes stagnant because there's no flow of God's Spirit through us. As we're thinking about blockages in hearing the voice of God, that sense of being people who are still, like a reservoir, but pouring out, that's a helpful image for us. People who are pausing, who are listening to in the silence to God, who are learning to recognize his voice more and more, and then from there pouring out into others, not becoming a swamp, not becoming stagnant. And I said last week that our relationships with others help us with God, and our relationship with God helps us with others. Because if I think practically right now, and maybe you can do the same, what things block us from one another? What are the things in our human relationships which put up walls and barriers and blockages? You could probably think of 3 or 4 things off the top of your head, couldn't you? And the same things stop us from God generally. I'm just going to mention a few, and then we're going to head over to Craig. The first one is that we focus on ourselves and not God. So one of the things that blocks us from hearing the voice of God, of encountering him, is because our lives are so focused on us. That even when we're praying, have you ever been in a conversation where the person's just talking at you and talking at you and talking at you, and you think to yourself, I would enter into this conversation if there was some sort of on-ramp to get on into it. And you get to the end of the conversation and you feel weary, and you think, and the person goes, oh, that was great talking to you, and they walk away and you think, yeah, that's what it was. You were talking to me. This wasn't an engagement. This wasn't a conversation. And we can approach God with a similar spirit where it's all about us. It's about our needs. We talk, and then we go. And we focus on ourselves, and we don't think of the God who we're approaching. Hebrews 4 says this, let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. That when we lift our vision from ourselves to the God who's on the throne, the God who is the King, the God who's in charge, the God who is sovereign, the God who is powerful, when we lift our gaze from ourselves to this God, we can approach him with boldness, with confidence, and receive mercy and grace in times of need. So one of the things we do is we focus on ourselves and not on the one we're approaching. And it's hard to listen to someone if our thoughts and our voice is all about ourselves. And the other way, and this is something we see in relationships, is the gunk that forms between us, the sin, the junk, the moments that occur that we haven't processed. It blocks us from hearing one another, and it blocks us from hearing the voice of God. The pride that we let creep in, that I'll do it myself. I don't actually need God. I don't need his voice. I don't need him to help me. When we've done things to other people and we start to shrink back because we know that God is perfect and powerful and holy. In Psalm 66, the writer says, if I had cherished iniquity in my heart, the Lord would not have listened. If I cherished pride, if I cherished the things that were wrong within me, then God would not listen to my voice. But a different psalmist says this, search me, O God, know my heart, try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. So that's a few things that block us from God. Focusing on ourselves and the junk that's in our life, the sin, the things which we know aren't right. We're going to move to a time of listening to Craig now. So let's welcome Craig.